Morning. This is a paid political announcement to start off this morning. I brought a bunch of applications with me and information on some of the stuff that Maranatha does. You all know who Maranatha is? I work for Maranatha Volunteers International. What we do for a living is respond to the requests from the church for new buildings somewhere around the world. Last year we built 1,300 new buildings someplace in the world, all using donations and volunteers. 500 of those were in Mozambique, in Africa, and they're brand new churches from the bottom of Africa in Mozambique, almost now to the top. We've got another, in fact, we finished the last church. We've got a big school to build, and then we will have finished our 4 schools in Mozambique, and each of those holds more than 400 kids. So that's part of what we do. Last Sabbath, I was in Brazil. No, let's see, I got to think about this. 2 Sabbaths ago, I was in Brazil, and speaking at the church in Brasilia, in the capital, where we have just begun a project at their request, because we only do stuff church asks us to do. I mean, I think we ought to go build a school in Bora Bora, but nobody's bought into that. And so we do what they ask. And in Brazil, the request, this is the coolest thing. I mean, just imagine a church saying they want to do this. The South American division has said, our people are not actively involved in serving others. What can we do about that? And if you look at Brazil in the northeast and north central, the Recife state, and then you come across into Amazonia, there are hundreds of villages that have absolutely no Adventist presence at all. And so the South American division has said, let's put an Adventist church there. Well, how do you put an Adventist church in a village where there are no Seventh-day Adventists? You have one or more congregations that currently exist adopt that village. And then that congregation or those congregations get together, pray about it, and they look around their congregation and they say, who is willing to volunteer to move to that village in Amazonia for 3 years and help us start a church? And they have volunteers now for 600 new congregations in Recife and Brazil, in the Amazonia states. Our job is to build the churches for those new congregations. And we do that with volunteers from all over the world and volunteers from Brazil, so that we're working together. And so that's the big project that we were launching 2 weekends ago. And at the end of the weekend, we had 2,000 signatures on pieces of paper asking to be volunteers in doing the building up in Recife as we start our first 200 buildings here in a couple days. Our leader in Brazil, Elmer Barbosa. And if you want to really watch a cool video, go to maranatha.org, maranatha.org, and click on the programs for Maranatha Mission Stories. One of my jobs is to host that television show on Hope and 3ABN and 3ABN Latino y todos los otros que hay. And click on that and just look for a program in Africa, in Mozambique, about Elmer. And it's showing Elmer. This is a kid who the day he graduated from university in Brazil, from the Adventist University outside of Sao Paulo, he said to the person who was doing the baccalaureate sermon, I got to do something valuable with my life. And 2 weeks later, he was in Mozambique with Maranatha, and he has now worked for us for 4 years. We gave him a brand new Toyota pickup, and we gave him the responsibility of exploring Mozambique and finding the GPS locations for the new churches that they asked us to build 1,000. And he went and found all those. And for the last 3 years, I asked Elmer on stage just 2 weekends ago, how many churches have you built? Elmer, with his own crews and his own volunteer crowds, has built more than 575 churches. And here he's 27. And so we said, all right, out of Africa, we want you to go to Brazil. And so he is the Maranatha country director in Brazil, and his current job is those 600 churches in the Recife and Amazonia. Wouldn't you love to have that job as a 27-year-old? That's what happens when you say, God, use me. I don't know how you're going to use me, but use me. I think it's 5 weeks ago now, we were in Havana, Cuba. And when we go to Havana, it's to build. And something happened in Havana when we were there recently, at the end of February, that I will never forget. We have worked in Cuba for 18 years. All Castro communist country. You cannot be a church. And then one day, when the Moscow government pulled their money out of Cuba, they said, we're not going to buy your sugar anymore, we're not going to buy your tobacco anymore, we're not going to subsidize your cigar industry, you're on your own. Castro called in all of the church leaders from Cuba, every denomination, sat them in a room and said, I was wrong. Religion is important. It's not the opiate of the people. The only thing that's going to keep Cuba safe is religion. And so I'm giving you full permission to be spiritual, to be religious, to have denominations, to have churches. All I ask is that everything you do funnels through Caridad Diego, who is our new minister of religion in the country of Cuba. And so Caridad Diego has been responsible for everything. They will not allow you to build a brand new church, no. But in working with her, we discovered that there was a way around that. She said, well, you know, if you've got a pastor living in a town and he's got a really big living room, that's okay. And so we started building houses and remodeling houses all over Cuba for the pastors. And we have more than 200 churches in Cuba as Seventh-day Adventist. We have more than 400 churches total, but we have worked on every one of those. But over 200 of those are homes. Some of them have living rooms that'll hold 200 people. And Caridad says, this is the best thing that's ever happened to Cuba. She stood up at the dedication of the new Adventist seminary in Cuba that we built, all with volunteer labor. Well, actually in Cuba we haven't used very many volunteers. They don't like us coming and building, they like us hiring their people. So we have a few volunteers, all donated money. And that's what's going on in Cuba. We've got a brand new seminary. Every single pastor on the island of Cuba has been trained in the seminary that Maranatha built. And the pastors are young. 25, 27, 23, 32. That's the pastoral team on the island of Cuba. Everybody else has left. Retired, gone. It's the kids running the church. So awesome. And so the front row, the dedication of the brand new seminary church, which holds 350, there's 350 chairs. And the Sabbath we were there were sort of 600 people in the aisles and sitting everywhere. And Ted Wilson was there with us, and he's an old classmate of mine from college, and so we were working together on trying to figure out a cool way to put the whole thing together. And on the front row right there is Caridad Diego, the Minister of Education for the country of Cuba, coming to help dedicate the brand new Adventist church. It is the only new church built in Cuba for any denomination in the last 18 years. And she came to dedicate it. And 5 chairs down was James Farrar. Now this is crazy. He is the chief of station for the United States government in the island of Cuba. That's like being the ambassador if we had an embassy, but we don't. But he's the ambassador. And he and Caridad had never been to a meeting together. And we had them on the front row of the brand new Adventist church at the seminary that's training Seventh-day Adventist pastors. And Caridad Diego stood up, and here's what she said. I want to thank the Seventh-day Adventist church for the way you serve your God. Because the way you serve your God has made Cuba a better country. You have taught us values. You have taught us to be moral people. You have taught us that God is the core of our society and our life. And I praise you for that. And that's Caridad Diego, the minister of religion in a communist country. She sits on Castro's cabinet. I mean, what I asked her, so Fidel is retiring and Raul is taking over. Has that changed your job? And she says, no, I still have the same responsibilities, and I really enjoy working with Raul. That's what we do in Cuba. In India, we've just finished our 7th 1,200 student boarding school. It's just an amazing, and we don't do anything that the Seventh-day Adventist Church doesn't ask us to do. And if you come to our office today in Sacramento, California, you'll find a stack of papers. In Don Noble, our president's office, there are requests from the Adventist Church around the world for 120,000 new churches. And over here is another stack for 50,000 new schools. And our prayer this year is that we will get almost 2,000 new buildings completed during this calendar year, and we're off to a good start. So, we do all kinds of programs with volunteers for teenagers, for young adults. We're doing young adult programs this summer in Mexico, in Honduras. Huge school. We've just about finished. We have a young adult project that will actually complete the project in Choluteca, Honduras. We're having fun. I've never had so much fun. And I've spent my entire life as an Adventist pastor, but I've never had as much fun as I've been having the last 5 years working with Maranatha and adventuring with God in impossible areas, impossible moments. I want to tell you something. I want to do 2 more things this morning really quick. I want to tell you something that happened to me last year. I got an email, and it was a very frustrating email because it was from Remnant Publications, and the Remnant Publications president says, "Hey, Dick, I want you to be a voice in our new Testimonies CD." Well, I didn't want to do that for a lot of reasons. It just wasn't something that was on my list. I spent a lot of time doing voiceovers for this and that and something else, but they wanted me to do one. And when I checked the amount of words they wanted me to read into a computer, 23,168, I think it was. That's a ton of words. I'm not sure I want to spend I just was not a happy camper, and I was certainly not on board with the project. So I said, no, can't do it. And they immediately sent me a note back and said, I really want you to do it. I need you to do this, please. Well, now I've got a friend asking me to do a favor, and so now it's a different issue. So I took the email into my president, Don Noble, and I said, should I do this? And he read and he looked at it, and he said, I don't know. What do you think? I said, I don't want to. And he said, then you need to do it. So I did. But I was procrastinator. I didn't want to do it. And so I just waited and waited and waited until I was down to the absolute last minute to get this thing done. I already had 3 emails saying, we got to have it Tuesday afternoon. Oh, it's Monday. In the afternoon on Monday, I call Wendy in and I say, come on, let's go record this. And so at 2 o'clock Monday afternoon, we drop into our recording suite at Maranatha, which is a little tiny cubicle room that really sounds pretty good. And I start recording. I did it raw. I hadn't read a thing. I hadn't bothered to look at it. And I began reading. What I was reading was every time in the testimonies, how many? Are there 7 or 9 or 220 volumes? There's a ton of them. Every time Ellen White quotes Jesus, I was his voice. They asked me to be the voice of Jesus. I can't do that. But here I am doing it. And I figured I was going to read all the red words. But as I got about 15 minutes into this thing, I stopped Wendy and I said, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm reading the same words again and again and again and again. Why didn't they just write down those same words? Let me read them once, and then they can dub them all. I mean, they've got computers. This is stupid. And Wendy looked at me and said, just read them. Come on. All we got to do is just spend here and get this done. Your talking's taking time. So I kept reading, and then I stopped again. I said, Wendy, I'm just realizing something. I need to take some notes. And from then on, I was not reading words. I was reading something a lot bigger. When I was done, here's what I learned. And this is why God had me do it. If you take all the times in the testimonies, and the testimonies are simply Ellen White writing letters to people, letters that God told her to write. She's writing letters. I'm not sure they should have been compiled into books, Because I'm not sure the letters that she sent to some dude in Australia about this has any relevance to me at all. But they're all collected, and so she's writing all these letters. And I'm reading the same quotes from Jesus again and again and again and again. She used them a lot. Why? Because they were important to her. Here's the most important. The book of John. Father, I would that they were one with us like you and I are one. That is her most used quote from Christ. Does that tell you that's important? I would that they were one with us like you and I are one. The most important thing that can happen in the Christian life, according to how Ellen White quotes Jesus, is oneness with God. I believe that's true. Number 2 on the list was fascinating. Number 2 on the list is Matthew chapter 5. But it's beginning in verse 13, 14, 15, in that whole area, where Jesus looks at the people and says, let me tell you why you're here. You're here to be salt, to bring out the God flavors in the earth. Let me say it a different way. You're here to be light, to bring out the God colors in the people of the world. That's her second most used piece. You can only be light, you can only be salt if you are one. Other than that, you're playing games with God. You're going out and you're pretending to be his person. But if you're not one, what kind of God colors are you going to show? What kind of God flavors are people going to taste when they meet you and you're not connected to the real food? Does that make sense? I mean, I'm starting to be blown away as I'm reading through all this thing. And then there's number 3. Everything else, by the way, after these 3 is just a few quotes. Oneness with God, book of John. Salt and light, God flavors, God colors, book of Matthew. And the third one's in Matthew 2. Matthew chapter 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats. Once you're one, he's inside you. You are so tightly bound together, you cannot be cut from God because you are one. As one, everything you do is salt, bringing out the God flavors, is light, bringing out the God colors, not because of who you are, but because of who you're connected to. If that's happening, when the king comes in judgment, he looks around and he says, okay, I want all the sheep over here and I want all the goats over there. And again, I'm not sure what he has against goats, but the sheep dudes, you know why they're there? Because they served God for him, not for themselves. That's the bottom line. I've been with Jesus. And for the last 4 years, I have tried my best to make him king when all he wanted was to be Messiah. I remember the first day I saw him. I was spending my time with the baptizer down at the Jordan. You know that. I was supposed to be fishing, but I'd gone to the Jordan because John was there, and the baptizer was busy doing his work all along there on the Jordan. And I would go along, and I listened to him. I talked to him. I was there first in the morning. I was the last one to leave at night. I loved what the baptizer was doing. He was the most inspirational person I'd ever been around. I was thrilled. And then one day he looked at me and he said, Simon, yes, sir. Look. And I turned and looked, and there was a guy walking down the edge of the Jordan. Now I realized there were hundreds of people around. It's not like there was one guy walking down the dust. No, there were hundreds. And he looks and he says, look at him. That is the Lamb of God. I looked, and there wasn't anybody special. Well, there was one guy taller than the others. And then I saw his eyes, and I understood what John had seen. Follow him. Stay with him. You need him. And I left John to be with the man I would know as Jesus, for whom for 4 years I would do my very best to teach him how to live in our society. when all he wanted was to be Messiah. I learned something from him at the Jordan. I tried to talk to him about palaces and houses and taxes and power and politics. And he told me he was a fox. And he didn't even have a den. And then just when we were ready to make him king, he disappeared into the desert. And I went home. Not even able to do what John the Baptizer had asked me to do. Stay with him. You need him. Instead, I ended up wandering back to my home in Capernaum and fishing. He found me there. It was one of those days when there was a crowd around him. I hadn't been with him. I hadn't seen him. He came to the edge of Galilee, and the people started shoving him in. And he looked over at me and he said, "Simon!" He remembered my name. "Simon, can I use your boat?" "Well, I guess, sir. Sure, sir." And I immediately ran, "Andrew!" And we left our nets and we dashed out to my boat and began pulling it out. And then I saw Jesus coming over, getting ready to get in. And I reached over and put my hand out and said, "Have you ever been in a boat before?" "No, I haven't. I'm a carpenter." "I know, you're a carpenter. I'm a fisherman now. And so, please, I will show you how to handle all this. So let me show you what." And I lifted him up and set him down. I said, "You'll learn very quickly that boats kind of move around a little bit funny. And why don't you go sit up there?" And so he took a fish crate, set it in the prow of the boat, and sat down and started teaching people. But I immediately saw something. My carpenter friend, when I lifted him onto the deck of my boat, he acted as if he had lived on water. He didn't go, "Oh my." He balanced as if that was no big deal. That day, I tried to teach him to be a fisherman. He taught me he owns the boats and the fish. I followed all the time thinking it was about me and not realizing it was about him. I remember one day we were standing with a whole group of scribes, guys taking notes to everything Jesus said to make sure that they had the words just right. And one of them looked at me and said, "Does your master pay taxes?" Well, I had absolutely no idea. And I said, "Sure," because I'm stupid. And because I wanted everybody to be impressed, and I wanted the scribes to be impressed that I knew Big Simon, who Jesus called Peter, knows everything and is certainly glad to be in charge here. No problem. Yes, of course he does. And Jesus looked over at me and said, "Do I?" And I suddenly felt like a total idiot. How many times with Jesus do I look in the mirror, see my face, and realize my foolishness, only to have him come between me and those who are laughing? Time and time again. In that case, I'm saying he should follow the rules. And he's saying, trust me. He said, go fishing. You'll find a fish. And in the fish you will find your tax and mine. I laughed, went fishing, and found the coins. For almost 4 years, I've tried to make him king. All he wanted to be was Messiah. Took us on the mountain one day. Moses, Elijah, Jesus. I wanted immediately to declare a denomination, build temples, synagogues, sanctuaries, cathedrals, tents, anything, so that our new group would have meaning. He taught me all I need is his light. He reminded us that on the first day of creation, God only did one thing. He showed up and promised to stay And he looked around at the light that came with him and said, "That's good." For 4 years, I had better ideas and kept trying to convince Jesus to live it my way. And all the time, he kept saying, "I think I'm going to live it my way and not yours, if that's all right, because I like what I'm doing and I really don't need it to have done your way." And time and again, I would push him. I would put him into corners, this corner, that corner. I remember one day we were at Matthew's house, and nobody would go to Matthew's house. He's a tax collector, criminy. Why would you go to his house? You want to be unclean the rest of the week, or the rest of the year, or the rest of your life? He's a tax collector, but we're all there because Jesus is there, and it seems that where Jesus is, you don't have to worry about whether that's a clean or an unclean place, because if Jesus is there, it's his. And so we're at Matthew's house, the unclean tax collector's house, and there are prostitutes who are coming and grabbing at Jesus and wanting to talk, as if his presence is going to transform their lives. And all of a sudden, there's a pounding on the door, and I go downstairs. It's Jairus. I live in Capernaum. I know who he is. He's the ruler of the synagogue. He's the big cheese in town. He's the guy in charge of everything that happens in Capernaum. He hates Jesus because Jesus is who everybody's talking about, and no one's talking about Jairus anymore. And I just about laughed. "You have come to Matthew's house, Mr. Jairus?" This is too funny. "I need to talk to Master." "You call him Master?" "My wife has asked me to come. My daughter is sick." Jesus was there in an instant, as if he had heard everything that had happened at the door, and he was suddenly standing beside me, and he looked at Jairus and said, "What? Little lamb is sick?" "Yes, she is." And then in my mind, I could see every morning when Jesus was telling stories down by the side of the lake, there was Mrs. Jairus and their little girl, little lamb. That's always what Daddy called her. I think she had some other name, but none of us had ever heard it. And little lamb was there, and she just loved being where Jesus was. She's sick. The doctors say she may die. Come. Only you can heal her. And in my mind, all I could think of was Jairus walking from his house up on the top of the hill all the way down the streets of Capernaum, all the way past all of the women who look out their windows and say, "Good morning, Jairus. Where are you going? Little lamb okay now?" And he ignores them all because he's walking to the unclean tax collector's house to collect his mortal enemy, the one who has supplanted him in the minds of all the people, this Jesus, the pretend Messiah. And Jesus says, "Simon, get the others. Let's go." And we begin to walk. And we get just a little ways down, and all of a sudden, there are so many people, there's no way we can make any progress at all. Headway is impossible in a chaos like this. And as we're walking along, all of a sudden, everything stops. And I know that's exactly what to expect. Too many people, and I start to say, "Make way, make way." My job is to help this be successful. Do you realize how valuable it will be to Jesus politically if Jairus becomes a follower? And if he can get up there quick enough, get little lamb healed, man, we can have an evangelistic crusade that will baptize everybody. All it's about is politics. It's connections. This is the way we get our solutions. Now, make way. Yeah, I remember. I was staying next to Jesus. And as I'm saying, "Make way, needs to come through, the master is coming," puts a hand on my shoulder and he says, "Excuse me, who touched me?" And I lost my temper. "Who touched you? Why do you worry about who touched you? We're on our way to do the most important political event that you have ever had in the city of Capernaum. This may be the turning point of your entire career. If you want to be king, you've got to do stuff that is king-like. That means you quit messing around with who touched you, who didn't touch you. You're in a crowd. Everybody's touched you. Now get on the way." For 4 years, I've been trying to do this. And all he wants to be is Messiah. "Who touched me?" he said again. And then I looked down, and our feet is a woman I knew from Capernaum. If Matthew is unclean, she is filthy. And she touched him. I'm trying to make him a success. All he wants to be is Messiah. I've been with him. Can I talk about this week for a minute? Before I do, one day he looked at me and we're walking along just on a path someplace. I don't remember where. And he says, Simon, who do people say I am? And we told him all the stuff they say. You're the best. You're the most wonderful. You're the healer. You should be king. You're better than Caesar. You are awesome. You have to be the Messiah come to life. You are God alone, blah, blah, blah. And then he looked at me and he said, and who do you say that I am? And I said, why, Jesus, I know. You are the Messiah, the Son of God, sent directly from heaven to be in charge of the universe. And he said, get behind me, you devil. I want to make him king. And in the process, it became his demon. This week's been hard. On the first day of Passover, we walked from Bethany to Jerusalem. Now, he had sent us ahead, John and I, and we'd already gone into town before. And we had brought back, well, I'd brought a donkey. He rode it. We waved branches. I took off my jacket. I laid it before him on the ground. I let the donkey walk on it. I picked it up. I laid it down again. I let the donkey walk on it again. We all cheered. Hallelujah, the Messiah has come. This is our new king. We were having a party like no Jew had ever had before. This was better than bringing David in. This was Jesus, the king, the Messiah, the leader, the greatest of all, God himself. And I knew that. This was going to be it. The entire Roman army would fall. All he had to do is stand up and say, fall, and they'd be gone. What I discovered, he was more eager to make stones sing as he played mother to lost chickens. It bothered me. I have spent the last 4 years of my life trying to make this man special. I have done everything I could to make everybody know him. This is who he is. This is what he does. Here, come. You must see. I remember that day in Galilee. We're out in Galilee, and the storm is coming, and he's out walking on the water like a ghost. You remember what I did? I said, hey, can I come join you? The reason I wanted to join him was so that they would get a picture of the two of us together and put it on the cover of the Jerusalem Times. Look at Simon and the guy with him. And the minute I turned around looking for the camera to be pointed my way, I realized that all he wanted to be was Savior. And he let me go in well over my head. Thursday night, we had a banquet, Passover meal. Everything done right. The hyssop, the wine, the unleavened bread, all this stuff. I was responsible for setting it up, sort of. I'm responsible for everything, at least I think so. I was sitting there, and I watched him, all of a sudden realizing that I had not gotten anybody to wash everybody's feet and that mine stunk. I tell you where we'd been walking? He went over and he got the basin and the towel. And one by one, he started washing feet. And when he came to mine, I pulled him away. Not me, Lord. not me. I should serve you. You should not serve me. And he said the stupidest thing. If I don't wash your feet, you cannot be clean. I've spent my entire life washing my feet. My mother taught me how to wash my feet so I could be clean. My wife washes her feet. I wash mine. Once in a while, when we are in a really wealthy hotel, like the Hyatt Capernaum, I have a servant wash my feet. It's quite awe-inspiring. But I can take care of my cleanliness. I don't need you to do that. And I told him, the only way you're really going to get clean is if I wash you. Well, then, if you've got to do it, wash me all, head to toe, okay? Because I want to be really clean if you're the guy. I wanted him to be king. All he wanted to be was Messiah. He looked at me at the table, and he said, you know, I'm going to leave you for a while. I've got to go to my father. And before he could even finish the phrase, I said, oh, I'll go with you. You see, it's my job to be where he is. It is my job to do all the stuff God would want me to do. I've got to take care of Jesus. I've got to make sure that everything is done exactly right. I've got to be the one who assures that we are exactly on line with what the Pharisees demand. And if he's going to go to his dad, I got to go along to be sure that everything goes right. I mean, I wouldn't want him messing up. I'll go with you. Simon. Yes, sir. Before I go, you will curse my name 3 times before you hear a rooster crow. And then he turned away. He wouldn't even look at me anymore. We left the room and went to the place that he loved so much in the garden. There's one of the old olive trees that's just all warped and gnarly. He loves, there's some rocks in that area, and he loves just going there and talking to his dad. I've listened in a few times. Sometimes it's in language I understand. Sometimes it's in something else. I'm not sure. It's like he's speaking heaven to his father. He asked me to be with him that night. And I was. I slept right through his prayer. I wanted him to be king. He wanted me to be his friend. I failed him again. 3.5 years. I have tried to tell everyone, no, I have lived as if it's all about me, only to learn it's all about him. He woke us up, started to walk out of the garden. Then I saw the torches. Then I heard Judas' voice. The next thing I know, Judas is coming running and is kissing Jesus. And then all of a sudden, there are guards everywhere, and there's flashes of swords and spears. And I realize they're going to steal Jesus. There's something awful going on, and I must fix it because I am the guy responsible for all this, you know. And so Simon the Peter, is going to take care of all this. I am a fisherman. I am anything he needs me to be. And right now, I am a swordsman. And I pull mine and whack away. And everything stops. Malchus, the chief advisor to the high priest, an old man who somehow is in charge of everything in the temple, I think. He's been there for many high priests. He is holding the sight of a very bloody head. And in the dirt beneath him is the ear I have just slashed from his skull. I look at my bloody sword as Jesus reaches out and takes it, wipes it on the grass, hands it back. Simon, we cannot live by the sword, or we'll all die by it. My quick reacting, intelligent behavior accomplishes nothing for my salvation except get me in trouble. And then he reached down and he picked up that dirty ear, dusted it off with his own hands, blood now on his. And I'm looking, and here is Malchus with the blood going down his robe. And I'm thinking, what's he going to tell his wife when he gets home? And Jesus reaches up and puts it back. And the one I want to turn into king shows Messiah. At that we all run. Everybody goes their own way. Me, I go along because I want to see what's going to happen next. And we go down to Caiaphas' palace. And when we get to Caiaphas' palace, what do? I curse him 3 times. And then the rooster crows and he looks at me and his eyes, they should have said, "You stupid idiot. Go back to your boat." His eyes said, "I love you. Come." And I ran far away as I could get. I didn't want to be anywhere close to it anymore now. I didn't stay. I didn't watch. I didn't go to the trial. I didn't go to the hill. I didn't go to the death. I didn't go to the tomb. I went away, as far as I could get. I didn't want to. I realized I had spent my life. I had expended my life. I had given until there was nothing left to give. And everything I had given it for was wrong. I wanted him to be king. He wanted to be Messiah. I'd been with Jesus. I know. Mary came first. Found us all here in the upper room where we'd been hiding in broad presence. John and I ran. And when we got close to the tomb, I slowed way down and let John get there first. The last thing I wanted was to look at Jesus again. I mean, after all the stuff I've done, and after cursing his name, and after telling him, "Yeah, wash me head and feet," I said, "What an idiot I am." It's like I spent my whole life wanting to be first. Maybe that I wanted me to be king, and maybe he could be prime minister. Maybe that's what I was really doing. And all he wanted to be was Messiah. John went in, came back and said, "He's not there," and ran. I walked in. And when I got into the tomb, I saw 3 things. It was empty. I hate tombs. But there's something nice about an empty one. Especially when when the one who's treated you like his best friend had been lying there. Second thing I saw was that on the slab that was his bed, the dead man's hell, were all the grave clothes nicely folded. And I knew it was Jesus. And I knew he was alive because at the head of the bed was this little linen cloth, which I have watched for 4 years. As every morning when he rises, he takes the cloth, cleans up, folds the cloth, and sets it where he has been sleeping, placing his head. This morning, the cloth, it was there. And he wasn't. I walked out. And he touched me. Simon, Peter. I collapsed. And I tried to say, I have spent 4 years as an egotistical, self-centered, legalistic dummy. And I had nastier words. I'd used them all at Caiaphas's house. I couldn't say anything. He touched me. And he said, I love you. I forgive you. I need you. Meet me in Galilee. I've been with Jesus this morning at the tomb, but I'm ready to go to Galilee. I've learned it's not about me.